Live. There we are. And now I'm here live with Chelsea May LaRue. I've had so many questions, but let's start out with, how did you decide you wanted to be a pastor?
Oh, that's a big question.
Well, that's a good question to ask. That's a good starting question.
Yeah. So when I was 16, started out young, I was lost, as a typical high schooler is.
Right.
And
Where was this? What town?
this was in San Antonio, Texas. So I was thinking about doing marine biology, which I don't like the ocean. I don't know why I would do that.
Okay.
But I tried to graduate early from high school, and I tried to take all these tests, and I failed every single one.
Really?
And yeah, it was very overwhelming. I studied so hard, and it was so frustrating. And I remember sitting in Denny's with my mom, and I was like, I just want to feel like how I feel at church and at youth group. And she was like, you can, right? I was like, no, you can't make a job out of that. And she was like, yes, you can. And I never realized.
Uh-huh.
So I ended up talking to my pastor and the associate pastor, and they were like, yeah, you can totally do this. And
Right.
I talked to a chaplain at the Air Force Base that my dad worked at, and he was like, hey, you can do this. And so I just talked to a bunch of people and had this realization that I could do it, and I wanted to, and I felt like God was calling me to serve others.
Right.
So.
Well, not only that, let's talk about how young you are. This is your first pastorate, and so talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm 26. I just turned 26 on Thursday, actually. And
A young 26.
Yes. I went to college and then seminary, so that was 4 years, then 3 years, and came right out of seminary to be a chaplain and to be a pastor at this church. And it's actually kind of overwhelming most of the time. I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Okay.
Because I am young and I have these fears that people are going to trust me because they think I don't have enough life experience, because I hear that phrase so often. But
that's part of the deal. You got to get somewhere. And Crane Presbyterian, I've got to say, that's a very good congregation to start your job on.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
they're very welcoming.
What brought you to Crane?
Well, originally I saw a post on a seminary group on Facebook that they were looking for someone who would be bivocational, so 2 jobs, typically chaplain and pastor or something like that. And then at my spouse's ordination service, one of the pastors at Peggy at Trinity Presbyterian, she came up to me and was like, hey, did you know that Crane is looking for pulpit supply? And Ron happened to be there, and talked to him very briefly. And I just kind of, all of a sudden, all these people were just talking about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go meet with some people there.
Yes.
And I met with the PNC, the pastor nominating committee. We just talked, and it felt comfortable. And I really appreciated how honest everyone in the church is about the church, about the history, and about the people.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything what is the most challenging thing to start this mission? What is the most challenging thing you think in terms of what you have to do?
I think not necessarily specific to Crane, but to just being a pastor in Southwest Missouri, is just being a woman.
Yes.
That has been something that I struggled with in chaplaincy, and also just sometimes the looks people give you when they see me in my clerical collar, they're just like,
yes,
shocked.
Right.
So that can be
other female pastors before, so it's not totally new to us.
Yes.
That's going to be somewhat of a help, I would think.
Oh, it definitely is. In fact, when I was meeting with the session, someone asked me, so, not a lot of people in this area are used to female pastors, but we are. So how are you about that?
Yes.
It's like, it's a great learning experience.
Yes. Well, so, I mean, you've talked a lot, and your sermons are good. They're getting better, and
Good.
so I guess you did your longest one yesterday. But tell me about the mental experience, the mental ward. Tell me about that.
Oh, in the psychiatric hospital.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was my summer internship in Austin, Texas, and I really loved it. I was hesitant because, how do people react to a religious person coming in, especially with so many people having religious trauma
Right.
or psychoses around religion. Like I had a patient who thought he was Jesus.
That's
And
not
so
good.
how do you deal with that?
How did you deal with that?
Well, he was a frequent flyer. He came in there often because he'd get comfortable and then would stop taking his meds. And one of the best things you can do is just make someone feel comfortable. So he would ask you to call him Jesus and not by his actual name. And so that's kind of hard because you don't want to say, yes, you are,
Right.
but you want to respect them so they don't get frustrated.
Right.
So there's a lot of walking a line.
Well, you said you liked that experience, so tell me about that.
Yeah, I really loved it. One of the things that I love about chaplaincy, but then especially in a psych hospital, was that people were just so honest. Like at that point, especially because I've worked a lot with people with addictions and suicidal ideations.
Right.
They were at a point where they were just, here we go. I'm going to be honest because that's what I have to do. And just the vulnerability that people would share with me and let me into their life in that, even if it was just 1 hour, like it was just amazing. And to see people as who they are, as the people that God made them to be, was pretty amazing.
So what did you learn from that experience that will help you pastor the church?
That's a good question. I think patience, like listening and understanding that you don't know the whole story.
Right.
You only see a snippet of someone's life every Sunday, or even if you saw them every day, you're not seeing the inside of their brain,
Right.
So just being willing to be there with someone in the moment that they're in and not trying to force them into the moment you're in.
Right, exactly. Listening instead of talking. That's the key.
Exactly.
And so tell me about, what would you like to do with the church? What do you want to do?
Oh, that's a good question. You're asking so many good questions.
Good questions. I've done this before.
I can tell. I really just want the church to lead me, if that makes sense. That's one of the things that I love about Presbyterians, is that it's not the pastor in charge of the whole congregation. It's everyone comes together. Crane is so mission focused and so focused on its local community. And that's not something that I've always seen in my life, in my churches. And so
how so?
Really
because
cool.
I want to explore that answer. How so you haven't seen that?
Yeah. I've seen where we help like local food pantries and things like that.
Right.
But the fact that there were house fires, and I immediately got texts saying, okay, let's figure out how we can help these folks.
Exactly.
And the blankets that people brought in for the Monette nursing home, that's absolutely amazing. For things to happen that quick and with that much concern is just, it's so awesome.
Well, that's so fun. And I agree with that, because I've always seen that out of this congregation. And so what do we need to know? What do you need to know from us? What would help you in learning how to pastor?
I think how to lead in those situations.
Okay.
Because I want people to lead themselves, but I also need to learn how to be willing to be be at the forefront.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the hard things for me.
Well, definitely just kind of tell me, what do you see as your strengths and weaknesses?
Oh my gosh. Now I feel like I'm being interviewed for a job.
Well, you've already got a job, so you pass.
My strengths, I think, are my openness to learning and to being able to be wrong.
Right.
Accepting critique. That was something I had to learn if I was going to
Oh,
be a
yeah.
pastor or be a chaplain.
Without
You
a
have to
doubt.
be able to.
Uh-huh.
But I think my weaknesses definitely do revolve around my age.
That's
That's a big thing for me is just I worry. I worry so much.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard to be a pastor to someone when they're 20 years older than you.
Well, I could see that, but I think again that this congregation is a good one to have to learn that in, because I just think that, that's the thing, Bob Hackley talked about already being with you. I mean, what a great guy he is, and what a great place to start in our congregation.
Yeah. I definitely am excited. I'm so excited.
It's
I've been
gonna be
loving the
good.
first couple weeks.
Yes. So what has it been like? I mean, tell me your experiences?
With Crane specifically?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I have been pleasantly surprised.
All
You know,
right.
I was worried that I had nothing to say that people haven't heard before, and then every time I hear someone after church, they comment on something that I've said, and
Right.
oh,
Listen.
that's so cool. Yeah. Like, what do I have to say that hasn't been said in the past 2,000
Right.
years?
Exactly.
And even if I'm repeating stuff, it's cool that people are getting something out of it. I feel like I'm having a conversation with people, which is just, it's cool.
And I thought your sermon yesterday was so cool about how, because I learned this when I was in college, that the only people that refer to Jesus as the Son of God in Mark are the devils, are the demons. And I think that's so fantastic to find that out and realize, yeah, that's the only people who knew him, that recognized him.
Yeah, I struggle with those passages so much because I'm like, what does that mean?
Well, what does it mean to you?
Oh my gosh, what does it mean to me? I think it means that, you know, there's so much we don't know as
Right.
humans. And, you can get into all of the like, what can't we see that's already around us? Like,
Exactly.
you get into that, and it starts to hurt your brain.
It
But
certainly does.
one of the fears that came up for me when I read one of those passages in seminary was, wait, has Jesus met these demons before? Like, what does that mean?
Right.
And so then I just spiraled.
Yeah, it's one of those things, but when you sit there and you realize that that is the only person that calls him the Son of God and Mark is the demons, I think that is so interesting. And it was a college education that let me learn that. So it's one of these things everybody has to learn somewhere. So I
Mhm.
did at some point, but it's also interesting how much every time there's stuff to learn. And I really am just interested to hear your take on the scripture as well as anything else.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's really cool. Just you can read a same passage
Without a
40
doubt.
different times and you'll get something different every time.
Well, so tell me, what are some of your favorite passages?
Oh, the Book of Ruth is just my favorite whole book.
Okay.
It was very important for me in my own life, but I also came to love the Book of Esther
Okay.
because I had never read it before seminary. I actually had not read a lot of the Bible before seminary. Um, yeah. But when I was reading the Book of Esther, I was doing an exegesis class on that. So that's when you look at the original language
Right.
and you really dig into it. And I'd always heard people say, oh, it's about a beauty pageant and all these things. And it was
Which
not. I
well,
mean,
somewhat. There is a beauty pageant in it, shall we say.
yes, but it's about
Saving a
selling
people.
women into
Right.
the men's kingdom. It was just really interesting. And then I'd read a passage and we actually had so in the Book of Esther, one of the things that people are always mind blown about is that they don't mention God
Right.
like at all. And
Mhm.
so we had the rabbi that taught us Hebrew, he came in as a guest lecturer for that class, and he was like, actually, let me show you where it is. And the way that the letters line up in the middle of the book, it has like the YHWH, which is
Really?
forgot. Yeah. And so it's like, it's kind of there, but it's like hidden. And that's when you get into like all of that stuff that rabbis know. And I'm just like, what? Never would have guessed that.
Well, that's the thing. It's a lifelong education, definitely. So tell me about your husband and your married life and what's going on for you in that world.
Yeah. So my spouse, Seth, him and I got married in May after we both graduated from seminary. That's where we met. And he is currently yes. Yeah. We met there our first semester, and we did not like each other when we first met.
Really?
Yeah.
How so? Tell me about that.
I had half blonde hair. What'd you say?
When Harry met Sally, or what?
Sure. I had half blonde hair, and I have tattoos, and I had a septum ring and a nose rings.
Oh, wow.
And he was just like, oh my gosh, she is the epitome of Austin, Texas. I don't want to be near her. He's from rural Colorado. Austin is fun. It's amazing food.
Yes.
But then I didn't like him because he was so quiet. And I was like, talk, dude.
So what changed? We ended up made you attracted to him? What was the point that drew you to him?
Oh, he is just so smart and so good with words. He had his own blog, and every Tuesday he would post his Truth Tuesday. And he would just be so vulnerable with people. And then he'd write poetry. And I was just like, oh, a poet. And we just started studying together. And we clicked. He ended up becoming my best friend so quick. And from there just went into dating and all of that. And I couldn't be happier.
Well, that's fun. And tell me where he is the pastor.
Yeah, so he's the pastor at First Presbyterian Church of Aurora, Missouri. So not far from Crane. And that's actually why we moved here, was so that he could follow that call. But he loves it. It's what he was looking for. He wanted to preach in a small rural church.
Right. What do you think might be next for you? What's the next thing you guys are going to do?
Well, he will continue preaching. I think eventually he will look into being a professor of homiletics.
Oh, wow.
I think that's he'd have to get a PhD, of course, but he is so good at that. He helps me write my sermons because sometimes I'm just like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. Right. So he's really good at teaching. But I am going to hopefully pursue a chaplaincy residency so that I can become a board certified chaplain.
Okay.
I'd like to be back in the hospital setting instead of a hospice setting, and continue preaching as well, because I am learning that I enjoy preaching, even if it's hard.
You're getting better at it too, so that's important. Thank you. And so any other things you want to know about the congregation, or what else do you need to know?
I would love to know your connections to the congregation.
Well, of course, I'm in this very weird position because I had strokes at the end of 2019. And as I say, it's the best stroke timing ever. I had the best strokes ever. And so you'll never hear me be anything but positive about this thing, because it's let me just see how many things I need to complete and need to do. And I just love it. And so my family's always been members of the Presbyterian Church since I was little. And I think that clearly the stuff that this church has always done, from the first pastors all the way up to recent pastors. I mean, it's such an incredibly welcoming congregation, and so many people, so helpful to the community. And it does a lot of things that people don't even know that they're doing. They do it very quietly. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that it's about the perfect place to start, and know that people are they're out there in the congregation and they're talking about good about you, not bad about you. They're not spreading rumors or doing other things. They're doing the things that people ought to do in church. It's not always what happens, but it ought to be. And so I just think, And so let's just point out that part of this we're doing under the name of heroesandmiracles.org, which is a wonderful organization that we started. And the wonderful book that Tiffany Brown wrote was one of the first things we did. We've also got an amazing blog that I think will shock a lot of people and also help a lot of people when they realize the stuff that we're doing about my dad, which that's such a cool story. We're halfway through it. We've got 2 more episodes to go. And so if anyone wants to contribute, they can do that on the website. They can they click a link. They can be involved. But I'm just telling you, this is going to be big. It's going to help a lot of people. So I feel like I've done all these things and I've enjoyed talking to you. And so if there's anything else, I think we're done.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, did you enjoy it?
I did. It was fun talking to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. And now it's a very wide screen here. There we are.